think there's a few other people trying to get on, but they can just hop on as we're going. Thank you all for coming on today to our Zoom meeting. And I appreciate Jane, Amee, and Dana all logging on to share their knowledge this morning. I wanted to go ahead and get started. Jay, if you don't mind just letting us know any updates, anything that you've been seeing, especially with this crazy market we've been having, that you want to share with us. I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was on a different screen on my computer trying to read about the market, and it wouldn't unmute me when I was pressing the button. So yeah, so obviously we are in a once in a lifetime market. The way we're talking about it here in the office is, remember back in 2008, 9, when real estate was probably the cheapest it's ever been and ever going to be historically. I think we're in that similar market right now with regards to the cost of money and interest rates. I think that's the best way to think about it or think through it right now. What I can do, and actually, Dana, can I share my screen again? I gotta.
Yeah, let me make you host.
Cool.
Oh. Ah, shoot! Hang on, I lost. Are you Jay the drummer? Yeah.
That's me.
All right, you got it.
Perfect. So I'm gonna grab. So just to show markets and stuff. Share. There we go. If you were here last month, you remember seeing a screen similar to this. This is our mortgage-backed security market. It trades every day. Every one of these little candles is a trading day, just like you would have in a stock market. But this is what directly impacts our interest rates that actually flow over to our rate sheets that we quote customers. If we go back in time to kind of give you an idea, this craziness that's about to show up on your screen, all this wild red and green and wild, these are called candles, these trading candles. This was right at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic and news coming out and government shutdowns and stuff like that. But even if we go back, this encompasses a full year of trading. You can see we were down here. So the lower these candles are, that associates with a higher interest rate, okay? So back here at these really low end candles, that's when we were quoting, 5.5% across loan programs. We had the insanity of coronavirus, and now we've settled out up here. And then even since then, if you kind of zoom in on this data, if we go and kind of zoom in, we can kind of see, we kind of traded relatively flat around here. This is when we were quoting rates probably in the mid 3s. And then since then, we've had even improvement in interest rates as the Fed keeps buying mortgage-backed securities and things they're doing to try to keep the economy going. And we truly are in historical lows as far as interest rates go. We've never seen our mortgage markets close at prices up here. What does that actually mean? It's like, okay, well, the market's good. So what does that mean? Let me stop this share and pull up another thing I've got for you. And this will also, I think, kind of help pull back the curtain on what we mean when we quote interest rates for customers. This is a snapshot of a rate sheet that I pulled a few days ago. And what you see here, guys, is right here where it says rate. This is every rate that was available on a conventional loan when I priced this out, okay? So we really do have rates 2, 2.1, 2.2, all the way down the sheet here to 5%. Okay, and most people call, they want to know, like, what's your rate, or this company's at 3 and you're at 3.5 or 3 1/4. Well, no, we always have every interest rate available. What's also important is to look at this number right here, the price, and this is what we actually mean when we talk to customers about either getting a lender credit or buying down points. The numbers in red here, the customer would have to pay an extra $5,000 in closing costs to get a 2% interest rate, okay? But a 2% rate is only going to save our customer from $518 a month. It might save them, $50, $60 a month, but that's in exchange for $5,000 in closing costs. That might not be the most optimum or the best way to close that loan. Does that make sense? But we have
old one. No, it's being recorded.
Are those Homestar's rates, or are those national price?
No, these are rates that we're actually quoting for Homestar, but everybody, again, this should be similar across the board. Makes sense? So we're quoting par interest rates today. When we say par rates, we're talking like very little cost or very little lender credit. The black is a lender credit you can get, and we'll talk more about that here in a second. But these are, I mean, literally on a 5% down conventional loan, we're talking rates, 2.7, 2.8 on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage in today's market. So crazy, right? Like crazy low interest rates. And the reason I wanted to show this screen as well is for some customers, and the other thing I have to go over here in just a second, some customers might need to get some more help from the lender to cover closing costs versus getting it from the seller in the market right now we're in with buyers and everything going on. So we'll talk more about that here in a second, but I think a lot of times people assume that, oh, well, when you shop around for a mortgage, you should call around, ask what the rate is. Whoever quotes the lowest rate is the best mortgage company. And that's just not the case. We've got to look at the full picture. We've got to make sure we're accounting for the interest rate along with the cost of the fees or the closing costs, and make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're comparing apples to apples. Now, that kind of gets into one other thing. In anyone that's working with buyers right now, obviously, I only work with buyers, so we're working with lots of buyers. We all know in this market, due to lack of inventory and everything, it is really, really, really difficult to get a home under contract, right? Especially anything under that $200,000 price point, 220 or lower. Every home that I see, it hits the market. It's got 6 offers by the next day, and it's under contract the next day always. So I wanted to throw out a few ideas that we can do here at Homestar to try to help our buyers. We're trying to get the information out to real estate agents, just so where people kind of know some things we can do to at least try to, as best we can, tip the scales into our buyers' favor. The first thing is we're calling it our cash strip, or our 7-day close or 14-day close. What this is, and really we need every buyer to do that in this market right now anyway. It's having the customers go ahead and submit all their documentation. We'll go ahead and get them underwritten, and we'll actually clear all the conditions, anything about a bank statement, anything about a pay stub, whatever. We will get the file completely done, save for the title and the appraisal, right? And then the title work has to come back for a cash deal anyway. What we'll tell the customer is, look, make an offer. We'll train our agents, look, make an offer on the property. Yeah, it's going to be financing. It's going to be conventional financing, FHA financing, but put in there, we can close the loan in 7 days or 10 days. Tell the customer to have a inspector ready to go. Let's do a 3-day due diligence. Let's do a 7-day, a 10-day close. I'll let the customer know as soon as they get a home under contract, we're going to order an appraisal on a rush. Okay, the appraisal fee goes from $450 to $550 to do that. But it actually gives the customer a shot or a chance of getting some of these homes under contract. Whereas, my wife just had a listing recently. It was right in that price point. She had 6 offers in the first day, and every single one of them were FHA loans, and they were all 30 or 35-day closings. And the lenders were touting the fact that they could still get a file done in 30 days. And I understand that we're busy, but that's what we're trying to do to set our buyers apart and let people know, there's things we can do to try to help them get under contract. The other thing that I think people need to know about that we've always done, but it's becoming more relevant in this market, is a lot of these homes are being sold as is, or the sellers, there's enough buyers out there where they don't have to worry about repairs or renovation work. They don't want to have to deal with the headache of it. Guys, the fact that we can do repair escrows, we can do those for FHA and conventional loans, and we can do it for USDA loans as well. That's work that can be done after closing, okay? So if you see a listing and it says, no FHA, and you've got an FHA buyer that's interested in it, I'm encouraging agents, call and find out what is the problem. If the problem is that the home, it's a flip and it's sold in the last 90 days, well, that's not a problem we can overcome. Makes sense? But if it's, the home needs some work and the seller doesn't want to do it, we don't have to deal with FHA repairs, tell them no problem. We don't have to deal with FHA repairs. We can do a repair escrow. My buyer will handle it outside of closing. Maybe it opens up that possibility. We had a loan last month with a maximum one agent. No one thought it was going to close because the appraisal came back with some repairs and the seller wasn't willing to do any of it. We got a repair escrow done. The work got done after closing. We got the file closed. And I had both agents call me and be like, wow, I didn't think there was any way in the world that loan was going to happen. So things like that. And then the other thing is, and you kind of saw it on the rate sheet chart that I showed you, taking advantage of some premium pricing that's in the market. To get a home under contract, a lot of times we have to ask for less and less closing costs from the seller. And our customers that don't have any money, well, they need the closing cost, right? Well, okay, yeah, they might not get a rate of 2.75. They might have to get a rate of 3.25 or 3.3. But in exchange for that interest rate, it's still really low. We're still talking about a 3-point-something rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage. And now we can give the customer lender credit of $2,000 or $3,000 to help cover those closing costs. Again, to try to make our offers more competitive and to try to win a contract in a competitive situation. So just know that, guys, that we want to be a partner with you and help get these people under contract and make things happen. These are some of the tricks and tools and stuff we're using to make things work right now. And certainly if anyone has any questions about that, let me know, or just in general. But that's what we're seeing a lot of right now, and what we're trying to encourage people to do to help them get people under contract.
Jay, I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
The 7 to 14 day close, number one, do you have a name for that? And is it FHA and conventional? Does it include VA or USDA, or just FHA and conventional?
Great question. No, there's no way to include that right now for Georgia Dream, USDA, or VA. The problem is USDA and Georgia Dream have to go to those respective companies, either DCA or the USDA department, to get approved, and they're all backed up as well. Right now, DCA turn times are running about 2.5 weeks. So it's just really, really tough to get those pushed through in any kind of reasonable time frame. VA loans, the problem with VA is the appraisal. We don't know how long that appraisal is going to take, and their appraisers are backed up now as well, and they don't really have a good way for us to rush those appraisals through. Do we have a name for it? I'm sure we can come up with something awesome. How about Jay's Awesome Mortgage Closing Program or something like that? No, we can come up with something to brand it. I don't know, Home Sweet Homestar or something. I don't know. But
how about Jay the Drummer Beats the Competition?
There you go.
Oh.
Yeah. How about if you have buyers with other companies? Wow. No. Anyway. But no, like I said, that's something that we're really pushing. We had one, again, it's a different file last month. Customer went under contract, FHA loan. They went under contract, I want to say July 16th, July 17th. And we were clear to close with a package out on July 28th for a closing on July 31st. So it absolutely can happen, but it was a good customer. She had already turned in all of her stuff. Her file was completely approved, and we needed an appraisal and title work. We got it. We got the file closed. In fact, the only thing we were waiting on, we would have been able to close sooner, but I get it. And Amee can speak to this here in a minute. Guys, the attorneys are busy too, and it took a little while to get that title work back. But it absolutely can be done. And remember, title work issues, or the time it takes to get title work, is the same time frame it would be on a cash deal anyway.
And then the repair escrow, is that the FHA 203K loan?
No. Good question. So this is standard FHA, standard conventional loans, standard USDA loans. Repair escrows have to do it, and I should probably cover more details here, so that's a good question. This is not 203K. This is not renovation loan. This is not your HGTV loan, okay? This is minimum required repairs for the loan program to be able to close. So these are repairs that are required on an FHA or USDA appraisal, okay? If the appraiser comes back and says, okay, the home value is good, but the home is subject to repairing, some rotten wood on the fascia and replacing a light fixture where we've got an exposed wire in the kitchen or something like that, as long as the cost of those repairs are less than, it's $5,000 for FHA and it's $10,000 for USDA. As long as the cost of those repairs are less than those specific numbers, We can do a repair escrow where the customer gets a quote for the work, we get a bid for the work from the contractor. Again, this is not the seller's responsibility. So they get a bid for the work, we get a copy of that bid. At the closing table, we fund a repair escrow. The repair escrow can be funded by either the borrower or the seller or us or the agent, depending on how much it is. So it's just something else that we negotiate. In a perfect world, we'd like to have a little bit of appraisal room where we try to build it in. Maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. But we fund the repair escrow, and then outside of closing, after the loan has closed, then we send the contractor out to go do the work. We send the appraiser out once the work is done to inspect the property. Yes, this is good. It meets HUD minimum standards now. And then we release that money from the repair escrow to the contractor in exchange for the work that's been done. Make sense? So it's totally independent from the seller. It works on standard loan programs. It's not something that's a specialized loan program. And but it can only be done for work that's specifically required on the appraisal. The whole point is to be able to facilitate the loan and get the customer to closing because the appraiser required it. And
I have a question regarding that, and Amee, I'm going to need your opinion on this. So how does that interplay with the GAR contracts, where especially on FHA and VA, and there's a special stipulation to using conventional, because we've had some conventional loans where lenders have required repairs, but specifically, Amee, on the FHA and VA loan contingency exhibits, where the buyer and seller negotiate for repairs, X amount, seller will pay X amount of dollars towards repairs. Then there's that next paragraph that says, if the actual repair costs are more than what has been negotiated, the seller is required to get a third-party estimate, send that estimate to the buyer. Buyer and seller have 3 days to negotiate who's going to pay the overage of what had already been negotiated in that exhibit and what the actual repair costs are. And if that doesn't get agreed upon, the contract terminates. So I guess it was part of the
stipulations ever. The biggest thing that I'm seeing when it comes to lenders with these repairs, okay, let's talk about the VA exhibit specifically first. We just had one last week, and the lender made them go in and amend the contract to reflect it being differently than how the contract already had it. And it was a Georgia lender who was well versed in the contract, and they made them go in and amend the contract so that it had language in there of how they were going to handle the repairs. I think that is probably the easiest thing to do. What I have been telling my clients when they come to me, and a few of you guys have come to me with repair stuff, is to go to the lender first before we write anything, because there are things that when I go to write them, I might not know that there's a particular underwriting requirement for a specific loan that would prohibit something that we typically do on maybe a conventional loan. So what we have been doing is sending them back to the lender. And in a lot of cases, I will write it up. I'm happy to help you guys with this. Send it over to the lender and say, hey, here's the situation. Can you get this approved before they do this? That way, if there's any changes that need to be made, we can get those made on the front end before they sign. To me, that is the cleanest, easiest way to do it. That way the underwriter has seen it, they've approved it, and we know that we're going to be able to move forward once they agree on however those are going to be handled. Now, for the 203K, and for the loans that have the repairs already wrapped into those loans, that's a little bit differently, because then you have to do a whole new, when you do the FHA loan exhibit, some of the lenders are now requiring that we do a special stipulation or redo that loan exhibit with a stipulation in there of how the repairs are going to be done and what type of loan program it really is. So it really comes down to each lender has a different preference. And I'm going to tell you this, I've had underwriters in the same company, one will approve something and the other will say no. So it really truly is sometimes the luck of the draw on who you deal with. That's why we always say, let's get the lender involved when it comes to repairs for escrows or anything being held back, so that we know that we're doing it in a way that it will get approved.
Thank you.
And Amee, are you seeing that more when it's like if the seller's cutting a check to the contractor at closing for something like that, or for a
Yeah,
specific
so we are
lender-held repair escrow?
No, we are seeing more where the seller is where the seller is paying for the invoice out of the closing costs at closing. That is what we see by and large, the vast majority of. The only time that I have seen lenders require us to hold back is when it's over a certain percentage of the purchase price. If it is major electrical, major plumbing, major HVAC, we had one where all 3 units of the house were failing. And it was about $20,000 in AC unit repairs and replacements. And so what they did was the lender held the money back, and then the lender paid it once they sent the inspector out there to make sure it was done. So it depends on what it is, but typically the lenders don't want to hold the money unless it's large amounts for very specific things that are, again, high issues, electric, plumbing, HVAC. Sometimes structural will see it, but not often. But most of the time, we're just paying the vendor right at closing.
And I can kind of speak to some of that, guys, real quick. So if it's a totally different ballgame if you have the seller cutting a check to the contractor at closing versus doing a repair escrow that the lender's holding. At least it is at Homestar. Again, every lender is going to be a little bit different when you're living in this world. But generally speaking, these funds that we're talking about for repairs that are done to the property, the reason we like the seller to cut a check to the contractor at closing, because at that point in time, it's between the seller and the contractor, and we don't consider that part of the maximum allowable seller paid concessions on the loan. FHA is going to max out at 6%. Conventional loans will max out at either 3, 6, or 9%, depending on the down payment, but it doesn't count against that if it's going from the seller to the contractor directly. If it's going from the seller into a repair escrow, we don't count that as part of the 6% or 3% or 9% or anything as well. But be aware some lenders do. And if you have a customer that needs closing costs and the home needs repairs and it's got to come from the seller, that can create other problems or other potential underwriting issues if they read the guidelines that way. The other thing to know is just kind of, again, piggybacking off what Amee's saying is that the language in the contract, what my rule of thumb for that is that less is more. Okay, if we say, seller to write check of $1,000 to borrower's contractor of choice or something like that, that's pretty generic, and a lot of times that will skate through, at least over here at Homestar, that'll skate through just fine. If you say seller to write check to Bob's Restoration Company to fix foundation crack issue in the house, then that's going to cause a lot more questions and heartburn for underwriting when they start reading about foundation issues or mold remediation or things like that lenders don't necessarily want to lend on if the property's in a condition that it needs work like that. Does that make sense? So my best rule of thumb for you on that is less is more. Obviously, get with Amee, you want to make sure your customers are protected with the language that's in the contract. But I don't need a dissertation on exactly what work is going to be done by who on what date at what time. That tends to cause more problems in my experience than anything else.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I do want to caution you guys on is in your intranet, Dana has so graciously put a lot of the special stipulations that I've written, she's written, other law firms that are associated with you guys have written. I just want to say to you, the repair one, where it specifically has language in there that if the seller does not complete the repairs by a certain date, that the buyer may choose vendors of buyer's choosing to have the repairs done and withhold those funds or the payment from seller's proceeds. You guys have got to start using that. I am seeing so many transactions right now where we're getting the closing and the work is not being done. And I even had a realtor say to a client last week, well, you didn't put an option if they didn't do it. So you're still bound to buy and you can't walk out of it. So these are minor repairs, they shouldn't have been forced to do them. Well, they shouldn't have signed for them. I mean, it was just kind of an egregious argument in my opinion, but I do want y'all really looking at that specific one, because if you don't have a, statement in there that one has to be done by somebody that's licensed in that industry to do the work, and two, that an option that if the work doesn't get done, what happens, then we kind of don't have a whole lot of argument to help you with at closing to get your buyer not to have to buy right then, for them not to be a breach. So it's a very, very tricky thing to do, but please, guys, go in there and look at that intranet. There are so many well-written stipulations in there for you to use that are applicable, but I really want y'all to focus on that one right now because I'm really getting a little bit concerned of the number of repairs I'm seeing that are supposed to be done that aren't. We've had contracts literally fall through because of repair issues not being done, but there was no alternative for them to hold the money or have other vendors go. When realtors argue about it, I've had several listing agents call me and say, why are you telling the buyer's agent to use this? The stipulation's just, so overreaching and blah, blah, blah. And my response to them is always, does your client truly intend to do the repairs properly? Well, yes, then this should not be an issue for your client to sign. Because if their intention is to truly do those repairs the way that they've agreed to, that stipulation should not be a problem. And most of the time, the realtor will then say, yeah, okay, I get it, fine. The other thing I want to talk to y'all about is Fulton County tax bills are already coming out. City of Atlanta tax bills are coming out. Next week, Cobb County comes out. And then after that, it starts the domino effect of all of the other ones that come out between now and October 1. So I want you to be aware of that because at closing, it changes how we do the closing disclosure. The buyer will now be giving the seller a credit and establishing their escrow account because we're hitting that time where the buyers are no longer going to get a credit from the seller on the closing statement to where they're going to be giving a credit, the buyers will, to the sellers. So we're already starting to see some of that come across. Many of you may have heard 2 weeks ago, we had an exposure to COVID in our office. I just want to go ahead and address that because I've had a lot of you call me on it. We found out about it, immediately shut the office down. We're fortunate that we have another office right down the street that we could have moved everybody to. Not a single closing was delayed. We had set policies in place that if there was ever an exposure in the office, how we would handle it, what we would do. The only issue we had was the very first day we were down there on Monday, that we had to move everybody down to the other office was we had our computer people set up the copiers and everything. And until you get down there, you maybe just don't know, but when they took their laptops down there, they weren't connecting properly. So there were some printing issues and all going on, but they got through it. And then we were able to, run smoothly. Nobody that was down at that office for the week had any contact with the others at our office. So we have some of our staff right now working from home and some of our staff are working in the office. So we alternate that. The reason that we do that, I know that you guys really love the ladies in my office and love to go back there and say hello to them, but we do that for your safety and for ours. That way, if we make sure that if something were to happen and there was an exposure, we could easily pick up those who were working at home and move them to the other location. Does that make sense to everybody? And y'all understand why we do that? It's just a matter of, I never want to have to delay a closing because something goes on. I will tell you in this day and age with the COVID numbers rising like they have been, we all just have to take the precautions. We are offering every single person that comes in our office a mask. Everybody in my office is required to wear a mask as far as my staff goes. They are wearing masks full time all day long and have been for a little while. So they are very accustomed to doing it. I am not going to force somebody to wear a mask. I'm just going to highly encourage you to do it. I know a lot of you all have very, very strong opinions about this situation. And I respect your opinion, but at the same time, as an attorney, there's so much liability going on with all this COVID exposure. We want to do everything we can. We've installed, even prior to this, several of the non-touch hand sanitizer stations throughout the office. So there's just a lot going on. Just trying to keep everybody, in our office safe. Let me just go ahead and tell you, I've done the past week, probably 7 closings out in people's cars. They still don't want to come in. Virtual closings are still allowed through the middle of August. We don't know if that will be extended out or not. It is up to each individual lender as to whether or not they will allow a virtual closing. Okay, so if your client doesn't want to come in, happy to do a virtual closing where allowable, or we're happy to still do them out in the car. If you'll let me know in advance that they want to come, we have a pop-up tent we've been putting out there so they can just drive up under it, and that way they're kind of shaded and I can go over it with them a little better. We also have like a little picnic table they can sit at if they want to do that. So I just need to know in advance so that I can prepare. It's sort of been a little bit like the Caribbean lately with all the afternoon pop-up showers. So we're doing the best we can with it. But, I don't want anyone to feel like they are forced to come into our office if they're not comfortable. I've had quite a few people that aren't comfortable. Biggest takeaway from today is just be aware that the tax bills are coming out and are going to be due and payable. as soon as they come out of record, just so you know, that becomes a lien on title to the property. And as such, with it being a lien on title to the property, I have to collect it. So even if it's not due until October, the other part of this is we will be collecting it even if the escrows show that it was dispersed out of escrows until we send the payoff in. And the reason that we do that is because they will often disperse it the day of our closing or the day after or the day before, and we won't have notice of it. And therefore the payoff will be short. So we collect those tax bills no matter. As soon as we can verify that they were paid by the escrow company, we will then release them back to the seller. And it's only just to make sure that we have the money for the payoff in the event that there's a shortage. So that's the only reason that we do it that way. Most law firms do it that way and treat it that way until it's paid, because what happens on that end of it is lenders their escrow departments will pull the escrows out and they will sit in another account for a few days before they actually submit them. If they receive the payoff beforehand and before they actually submit them, they'll pull them back, and then there's a shortage on the payoff, if that sort of makes sense to you. But just be aware that tax bills did go up in multiple counties around our area, whether it was the education tax that went up or the actual county tax bill that went up. In Cobb County, your education tax did not go up this year. It was your county tax bill went up this year. So it's a less jump because it's about a third of your tax bill. But they did go up. So if you have any questions for me or you see something you're not sure about, just let me know.
Amee, real quick on the tax, because it creates an issue on the lending side as well with the tax bills being out with this contract language about prorations and prorating taxes and stuff like that. Because what happens is, like a closing that happens in April, we know on the lending side that we've got to collect however many months of taxes, and we account for that when we're trying to get closing costs from the seller. But we also know that we're going to get a credit from the seller from, say, January 1st through April 15th.
Right.
What happens, though, is we get messed up in October because now the borrower has to give the seller a credit back from, say, October 15th through the end of the year. And that cost from the borrower to the seller isn't specified in the contract as an actual closing cost or prepaid that the seller contributions can go towards. Make sense? So we have scenarios where we ask for $6,000 in closing from the seller. I've got $500 worth of tax credit that the buyer is paying the seller, but I can't move that to the seller's side, even though we haven't maxed out the seller with their $6,000. Is there language or something? Can we say proration credit counts as closing costs as a stip in the contract to solve that problem?
You absolutely can. And in fact, the GAR contract is written as such that the funds can be used for any reason. And so because it doesn't limit us, I often highlight that to the underwriter and to the lender, and then they'll go back and just move it over and do it. Some lenders do require a special stipulation. So during this time, if you're writing a new contract, you may want to add the special stipulation. If there's, an overage of closing costs, they can be used towards prepaids or buyer credits. So you can go ahead and start doing that now. If you want to, it really is, again, and I know this sounds like a scapegoat, but it's not, guys. Every lender is so different in what they will allow. I have a couple of lenders that they just don't care how we do it. They just tell us to utilize it or whatever. The other one that you can do too is, you can also put that the seller pay closing costs agreed upon herein can be credited towards prepaids. They can be credited towards buyer credits, as well as any HOA dues. We actually had a lender last year. They had asked for so much in closing costs. They allowed us to pay 2 years worth of HOA dues in advance from the seller paid agreed upon closing costs. So we can do that as long as the lenders and the parties agree to it. And, I'm a big advocate of negotiating up front so that you don't have to try to negotiate on the back end. It's harder to get people to change their mind or do something different after the fact than to go ahead and just do it on the front end in an effort to move forward with it, if that helps you at all in any way.
I agree.
Any other questions for me on any of the stuff that we talked about?
So there's language in the RE form standard stipulations about the closing costs that's vastly different from GAR.
Yes.
And I can pull it up and read it to you, but I can share it with you, Jay. Basically, it says seller's contribution to buyer's closing costs can be used at anything deemed acceptable by the underwriter. And then it even goes on to say, or merely at the discretion of the buyer. so that it can be used towards anything. And I'll look up that verbiage while we're talking, and then Jay, I can shoot it to you in an email.
That would be awesome, because we run into that from time to time, but usually it's because of specific language in the contract. So sometimes getting out in front of that, on the negotiation phase, it helps versus being on the back end of it and the seller realizing, oh, I can get $300 extra. No, I'm not signing that.
Amy, I have a question. I also use the stip that if a seller does not complete repairs by, and I always put, either 7 to 10 days, somewhere in there, depending on our closing period, that the buyer can hire their own contractor and be deducted from seller's proceeds. Fortunately, I've never had to actually use it. We came close one time, but because we had that, it worked out. But in the case that we do have to use that, is that something we have to get the attorney to agree, if they're not using our fabulous Amee, which why are they not? But is that something we have to get the attorney to agree to hold an escrow for payment after closing to the contractor?
It's completely dependent on what type of repair it is. So if it's something that's required to be done in advance of closing, the lenders are not requiring that money be held out for it because it's supposed to be done before they even buy it. So that's a big part of this issue. If it's something that has to be paid at closing to the vendor, typically, no, we don't have to do an escrow holdback. I've only had it happen one time, and it was a major, that one was a major, HVAC situation, and they said, look, because of the value of it and because of how much work has to be done, we're going to require that an inspector go out and make sure it was done properly, and then we will pay out of the escrow. I haven't had it done outside of that, though. Most of the lenders, because most of the repairs, let's be honest, are, the average repair that we see is about $1,500 in seller concessions for repairs. It's somewhere around $1,500 to $2,000. If it gets more than that, yeah, it happens, but it's not the norm. Normally it's a GFCI outlet with, something that needs to be fixed with a plumbing, a faucet, or, there's a toilet seat that's not sitting on there right. It's all these little things combined that they're paying for to get done. So my recommendation is to get it, and as soon as you know that the repairs are not done, go ahead and contact the loan officer and let them know that the seller's going to now have to pay them at closing because they weren't complete. And then they may say, well, send it over to me right away with the invoices so we can get them to the underwriter. I have some lenders who say, look, as long as they're being paid from the seller's proceeds, we don't care. And as long as the work has either been done or they're getting the check to take with them, we're good with it. It just really is underwriter dependent.
Gotcha. Very good.
Becky, also, since we have a trust account, any broker with the trust account can also be an escrow agent for those repairs, just like any escrow agent. It's just that make sure it's very clear what we need to do to release them. And then we'll need written agreement to release those as well, just like we do with earnest money, security deposit, so forth and so on. But anybody with a trust account, a broker, if not a closing attorney, can hold those. And in general, there is a blank escrow agreement form in the GAR contract package.
Gotcha. Very good to know. All right, before I turn this over to Dana to add some things, I wanted to go ahead and announce our 5 top sellers for the month of July. So I'm going to hold these up with my virtual certificates, and the real certificates will be in the accordion file for agents to pick up as they come through the office, turning in all the earnest money for all these top producing sales. All right, first we have, see if you can see this. First we have Keely George. Next we have Terry Younts. Yay, Terry!
Awesome.
Next we have Amanda Johnson, and hopefully these are lining up in the right order. Next we have Tiffany Wade. And last but not least, we have our lovely Anna Maria Stalker. So thank you, and I know Anna Maria and Terry was on the call. I think she just had to pop off, but yay, congratulations. And without further ado, Dana, I'm going to turn it over to you to round us out with any announcements, and unless Amee or Jay have anything else that they want to add or contribute, or if anyone has any questions, we will go ahead and address those at the end. Thanks so much.
Well, real quick, guys, just so where if you have customers under contract or people that are looking to refinance, or if you're looking to refinance or whatever, just heads up on the economic calendar. There's a really, really, really big jobs report coming out on Friday. That's always swings the markets, and everybody's real anxious, obviously, about unemployment rates right now. And there's a lot of opportunity, in my opinion, for the market to pull back a little bit and rates to creep up, at least in the short term. Obviously, my customers know about this, and we're going to protect them from, with rate locks and things like that. But just know the expectation is that the unemployment rate will improve to 10.5%. It's kind of scary if you think about it. We're improving to 10.5%, but we get some data in the middle of the week. We can kind of get a reading or a beat on where that number will actually be before we get there. But just be aware, I think that has a really big opportunity to push stock prices up and to push our interest rates up with it if we're not careful. So just be aware of that for customers that are potentially floating interest rates right now.
Thank you, Jay. Good information.
Awesome. All right, just a couple of things. One is, you guys, please, we have a library of amazing special stipulations in the reference section of Paperless Pipeline. And especially for the repair issues, and also you guys, for your clients getting down payment assistance. If you don't specifically make the contract subject to them receiving those down payment assistance funds, their earnest money is, and if they don't get them, their earnest money is absolutely not protected on the financing contingency. That's not a financing contingency issue. As a matter of fact, the loan exhibits specifically say that a buyer not having down payment money or closing cost money is not a reason to be protected under the financing contingency. So Amee has graciously written us a special stipulation making the contract subject to the buyer receiving those down payment assistance funds. You guys have got to use it every contract where they're getting them, because if they do get turned down, they're not getting their loan, they're not getting the house, and they've lost their earnest money unless it's under due diligence, which it's not because of the time frame for that.
Dana, on that, just so y'all know, we've had 3 contracts fall apart because of USDA time contingencies right now, as well as down payment assistance funds taking longer than normal to get approved and finalized. And they get outside of the contract, and then the seller has held on and held on and held on with all these promises it's going to happen, and it doesn't because of the time delays, and the sellers end up not renewing the contracts, and there's nothing in there to protect our buyers. And they've lost their earnest money in several of those situations. So please use these special steps. I know it's a lot to think about, but if you have a question, please ask, because I don't want you to get in a situation where your client loses their earnest money, because as soon as they lose their earnest money, it becomes your fault. Whether it is or not, doesn't matter to them. It's suddenly your fault. We have it all the time where they get mad when we're holding earnest money and we have to disperse it according to the contract, and they don't like what the contract says after the fact. So just be aware of that.
Also, I did a video, and I think it was in Sunday's newsletter a couple weeks ago. You guys have got to use, if you're working with a buyer, please use that service recommendation forms. We just had another one where our buyer was extremely mad at our agent because they closed, and at the closing table, they found out the property that they thought was 2.5 acres was only 1.5 acres. Because they didn't get a survey. The buyer said the agent never said anything about getting a survey, so forth and so on. That is one. I have revised it to add a lot more things. Survey is addressed in there. Checking flood insurance. We had one where the buyer had to get flood insurance, so there was an increase in their premium cost for that. The seller never disclosed it. Well, the seller never had to pay it. And for whatever reason, their own insurance agent didn't disclose that to them up front. It was discovered at the closing table. And the buyer was extremely mad at our agent. So please take a look at the revised service recommendations. It is in the reference section of Paperless Pipeline. Asbestos, we just had a deal fall apart because of asbestos. And it was outside of due diligence, and that is a buyer's due diligence issue. So and the seller had no specific knowledge of it. So anyway, you guys, please, you've got to protect yourself and protect your buyers, and make sure that you're having these discussions with your buyers so that they may make an informed consented decision regarding how to proceed and what to do before they proceed with the property. So just wanted to announce that. Jay, I just sent you an email with the verbiage about closing costs from the RE Forms contract. In general, we had a fabulous July. We had 308 closings for a sales volume of $85,345,533. That is a fabulous July in this market right now.
Could you repeat those numbers, Dana? I'm sorry. I want
308 closings. Sales volume of $85,345,533.
Yay, thanks.
And we still have 44 that have yet to close. They've been delayed for whatever reason.
And that was the month of July.
The sales volume for this month last year was only 84,275,000. So we've done, so the market is back. Also a breakdown by office. The Douglasville office closed 43 for 10 million. Paulding 45 for 10 million. Powers Ferry closed 99 for 30 million. West Cobb closed 75 for 21 million. Woohoo! Woodstock closed 41 for 13 million. So we are kicking butt at West Cobb. And agents in realty agents in MXGA closed 103 closings for 25 million. And agents who are realtors in MXGR closed 205 for 61 million. So great job, everybody. We had a fabulous month, and thank you guys so much for all of that. Classes, I wanted to let you guys know about the classes. They are all virtual for probably through the end of the year. I am teaching on, I'm teaching on Thursday a class on, it's called 2020 Contracts Review, and it is a comparison, direct head-to-head comparison between GAR and the RE forms. And on the 11th, Jay is teaching a USDA class virtually called Get Familiar with USDA Loans. There is a Georgia MLS Introduction to Transaction Desk class. I'm teaching RE forms on the 12th, GAR class, appraisers classes. We've got a ton of classes, and Amee is teaching on the 19th, effective negotiating. And Amee has not taught this class in a while, so that's going to be a fabulous class. So you guys, please check out the calendar. They're all virtual, and this is just a great opportunity to take classes virtually, where you might not otherwise have the ability to take them due to the instructors teaching at various geographic locations. So we're excited about that. And like I said, more than likely, this will continue through the end of the year. All right. I have a very exciting announcement for Maximum One as a whole. We are going to join forces to actually dominate the market and just create a super amazing mega Maximum One office. So Dave, in his just amazing outside of the box thinking, is buying land next to the Paulding Hospital, Paulding Wellstar Hospital. So it is basically at the intersection of 278 and Charles Hardy Parkway. If you're going not down 278, but Charles Hardy Parkway and going, and the hospital is on, you cross over from West Cobb, you're going in that direction, you cross over 278, the hospital will be on your right. You keep going a little further, there is land. Dave is buying land and is going to build a brand new Maximum One office, and it is going to be a mega office. It is going to be a combination of the West Cobb office, the Paulding office, and the Douglasville office. And it is going to be just amazing with the synergy between all of the agents there, all of the staff there. Dave has impeccable design aptitude and servicing conscientiousness. It is going to have a place for social gatherings. It's going to have a fire pit. It's going to have an outdoor grill. It's going to have a coffee bar. It's going to have a huge parking lot. It's going to have one-person offices, two-person offices, a whole wing for agents with teams. There's going to be a broker office. I'm going to have an office there. Dawn is going to have a compliance broker office there. Michelle is going to be the branch manager, so Dawn will be full-time compliance. It's going to have outdoor living space. And again, it's going to be the way our amazing concept is our agents can be as virtual or as traditional as possible. So virtually, you guys, you all have Bank Shot where you can deposit not only your earnest money, but you can deposit your commissions through Bank Shot. I don't know if you can see, it's invisible. Just with your cell phone. So we've got Bank Shot, we've got Pay at Close, we've got ACH deposits. We're going to have CE classes through Zoom. And so you can still be as virtual as you want, or you can be as traditional and come into this. The synergy in this office is just going to be incredible. And the design is going to be gorgeous. And like I said, Dave's going to have agent offices, bullpens for people who just want to come in and work and have a little bit more privacy around them, and outdoor spaces, conference rooms, team rooms. We're just really, really, really excited, and we hope you guys are too. Y'all are the first office to hear about it. Staff has heard about it, but you guys are the first actual office to hear about it. Any thoughts or comments?
Thanks, Dana, for the information. Man, I had 10 acres for sale right behind the hospital. Y'all could have bought it from me. Well, not me. I was listing it, but we are closing on Friday, so I sold it to somebody.
Awesome. So we are just really, really excited. If anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to email me, email Dave, and we'll be happy to answer any of those questions. So, but we're psyched. It's just going to be really, really, really cool. So we'll still have the Woodstock office. We'll still have the Powers Ferry office. And then we'll have this mega amazing office. So from where it is now, if you're not familiar with going in that direction, it is 10 minutes with traffic from West Cobb. It is 2 minutes with traffic from the Paulding office, and it's approximately 20 minutes from the Douglasville office. So it is still relatively centrally located. So we're just really excited, and just getting, everybody right now with COVID is used to doing things virtually. So this is the perfect time to do it with the least interruption and disruption to all of our agents. So we are excited about that. And
does it have a target date, Dana?
He is buying the land, and then Dave's going to build. Dave's basically, I think, going to be general contractor on the building. We're looking at the end of the year or maybe into the spring to open up that office. Depending on what's going on with the West Cobb office, we might end up moving out of the West Cobb office sooner than the new office is ready. So in the meantime, if we do vacate the West Cobb building before the new building is available, we'll just operate out of the Paulding office, which again is less than 10 minutes away from the West Cobb office right now. Also, just so you know, once this building is up and running, the corporate address for the realty company MXGA is going to change. So, and also I had a question yesterday, or it just occurred, Michelle actually brought up this question. What about an address for agents on their business cards who don't necessarily want a Paulding address, because it's going to be, it's either going to be Hiram or Dallas. I think it has a Hiram address. There is nothing in the Real Estate Commission rules or license laws requiring an address to be on any of your marketing or advertising, including your business cards. So there are some brokers that do have a policy on putting an address on your business cards. We do not. So on your business cards, you do not need to put an address on there. And, you know, in our Atlanta metro area, you guys live, work, and play in one area, and you get business all over anyway. So this is, again, feel free to not put any address on your business cards, on your self-promotion marketing, things like that. It's not required by any license laws, and it's not required by any of our policies. You're muted, McKay, if you're asking another question. Nope. All right. Again, we are, please, if you, basically the people that are usually on the sales meetings are the ones that are reading the Sunday emails. But if you're not, or if you know of someone that's not, there is a lot of information that I have been sharing on the emails, and a lot of the contract tip videos. And the videos, you know, like when one house sells, usually two more sell right away. That happens to be true for broker issues too. When one agent has a broker issue, there's usually two more right away. And when there is an issue, usually I do a video on it or address it in the Sunday email. So make sure to look at that. We have a lot of announcements going on, a lot of tips and tricks. I also try to bring in a lot of information from third-party vendors, what's going on with Zillow programs, and Tom Ferry. Tom Ferry is having his summit in September. It's going to be virtual, and I think we're not going to live stream it because of the time difference, but we are going to buy the rights or the viewing rights to the Tom Ferry Summit. And then I believe we also have re-recording rights to it, if that makes sense. So if anybody is interested in taking it via live stream, I'll have information for you for that, but we will also live stream it via Zoom. We're still working that stuff out during East Coast time hours versus West Coast time hours. So we're working on that. And just a bunch of exciting things that we're working on like you heard, there are multiple offers on, this is a very fast market with sellers getting multiple offers. Best thing to do is absolutely get your agents with Jay pre-qualified, pre-approved way before you ever put them in your car to show them properties. Also, make sure you're well versed in the backup contingency exhibit, because a lot of things that we're also experiencing in this market is if we have a buyer that has lost out on one or more than one property, then they're putting multiple offers, and actually they're putting multiple contracts on properties, and then they're taking their time and picking of the ones they've got contracts on. They're terminating under due diligence on two of them and only going forward with one of them. So if you have a buyer that's interested in a property that's already under contract, a lot of times if your buyer puts a backup offer on it, we're having, not only are we having great sales months, but we're having record number of TNRs. And I think that is what's happening, is buyers are just securing properties and then whittling them down in the due diligence period and terminating the other ones. So backup offers are great, a great way for your buyer to perhaps get a property that they think they might not get. Anything else, anybody? I've got everybody on mute, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask me any questions. Let's see, there's something in the chat. Awesome. Anna Maria says, thank everybody for such a great virtual meeting. We will more than likely continue, especially with what's going on, we will more than likely continue the virtual sales meetings through the end of the month also.
All right, thanks so much, Dana. Thank you, Jay, Amy, our lovely Dana, for all the great information. As Dana said, we will, until further notice, continue the virtual meetings for now, just for the protection of all of our agents. So thanks again, you guys. Good luck with the rest of your sales and the rest of this month, and we will see you next month on the first Tuesday.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.